The message came from the stars on a cold winter morning. Every screen on Earth displayed the same image at the same time. A face appeared. It was not human. The creature had pale blue skin, for eyes arranged in a diamond pattern, and a crown made of living light floating above its head. When it spoke, the words translated themselves into every language on the planet. I am Empress Velith of the Orith Dominion. Your species has entered our territory. You will send one soldier to represent your kind. This soldier will face our judgment. If they fail, your world becomes ours. You have 30 days. The screen went dark. The world erupted into chaos. Governments held emergency meetings. Military leaders argued about who should go. Some wanted to send their strongest warrior. Others wanted to send their smartest general. But Earth had no idea what they were dealing with. The Orith Dominion controlled over 1,000 star systems. They had conquered species far more advanced than humanity. What chance did Earth have? In the end, the decision was made by a simple computer program. The United Nations created a system to select the most suitable candidate based on psychological stability, physical endurance, and cultural adaptability. The computer searched through millions of military personnel around the world. The name it selected surprised everyone. Sergeant Park Tae-ho was 32 years old. He served in the Korean Army and had spent most of his career training soldiers in mountain survival. He was not tall. He was not particularly strong. He had never seen real combat. His file described him as quiet, patient, and unremarkable. When the officers came to his small apartment in Seoul, Tae-ho was cooking dinner for himself. He listened to their explanation calmly. He looked at the documents they showed him. Then he nodded once and said, I understand. When do I leave? The officers had expected fear. They had expected questions. They had prepared long speeches to convince him. But Tae-ho simply accepted the mission as if someone had asked him to take out the trash. Are you not afraid? One officer asked Tae-ho, thought about the question carefully. Fear does not help, he said. I will do my best. That is all anyone can do. 3 weeks later, Tae-ho stood inside Earth's first interstellar ship. It was a small vessel, built in secret over the past decade, after humanity discovered faster-than-light travel. The ship could only carry 20 people. Most of them were diplomats and scientists. But one person caught Tae-ho's attention. Her name was Kim Yuna. She was 30 years old and worked as a xenolinguist. Someone who studied alien languages. She had spent the past 5 years analyzing every signal humanity had received from space. When the Orith message arrived, she was the first person to fully decode it. You are the soldier, Yuna said when she first saw Tae-ho. She looked him up and down. You are smaller than I expected. Tae-ho smiled slightly. I hear that often. Are you ready for this? She asked. No, Tae-ho admitted. But I will become ready. Yuna found herself liking his honesty. Most soldiers she had met were full of pride and confidence. Tae-ho was different. He seemed comfortable with his own limitations. The journey took 3 days. Tae-ho spent most of that time sitting alone in his small cabin. He did not exercise or study. He simply sat and breathed. He had learned this technique from his grandfather, who had been a monk before the war. His grandfather used to say that the mind was like water. If you let it become still, you could see clearly to the bottom. When the ship arrived at the Oreth homeworld, everyone pressed against the windows to look. The planet was massive, at least 10 times the size of Earth. Its surface was covered in cities that glowed with golden light. Ships moved through the sky like fish swimming through an ocean. Everything was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. They have ruled for 10,000 years, Yuna whispered. Their empire existed before humans learned to write. Tae-ho looked at the planet without expression. All things end eventually, he said. The ship landed in a massive hangar filled with other vessels. Some were larger than buildings. Others were shaped in ways that made no sense to human eyes. Aliens of many different species moved through the hangar. Some walked on 2 legs. Others floated in the air. A few crawled along the walls like insects. A group of Orith soldiers waited for them at the bottom of the ramp. They were tall, nearly 8 feet in height, with the same blue skin as the Empress. Their bodies were covered in armor that seemed to grow from their flesh like scales. Each one carried a weapon that hummed with energy. The leader of the group stepped forward. She was female, and her armor was decorated with symbols that Yuna recognized as marks of high rank. "I am Commander Rin," she said. Her voice was cold like ice. "I will escort your tribute to the arena of judgment." "Tribute?" one of the diplomats asked nervously. "We were told this was a test." Rin's four eyes focused on the diplomat. "It is both. Your soldier will prove the worth of your species. If he fails, you are not worthy of freedom. This is the law of the Dominion." The diplomats began arguing, but Teho walked past them. He stopped in front of Commander Rin and bowed respectfully. "I am Sergeant Park Teho," he said. "I am ready." Rin looked down at him. She was easily 2 feet taller than him. Her expression showed nothing but contempt. "You are small," she said. "Weak. Fragile. Your bones would break like sticks in my hands." Teho did not react. "Perhaps," he said calmly. "We will see." A moment something flickered in Rin's eyes. Confusion, maybe? Or curiosity? She had crushed hundreds of warriors from dozens of species. All of them had shown fear when they stood before her. This tiny human showed nothing. "Follow me," Rin commanded. As Teho walked away with the Orith soldiers, Yuna called out to him. "Teho, be careful." He looked back at her and smiled. It was a small smile, but it was warm. "Do not worry," he said. "I will return." Then he was gone, disappearing into the golden halls of the Orith Palace. Yuna stood there for a long time after he left. The other humans were talking nervously around her, making plans and predictions. But Yuna remained silent. She had studied the Oarth for years. She knew their history, their culture, their beliefs. They valued strength above all else. They had never shown mercy to any species they considered weak. And yet, as she looked at Teho, she felt something strange. It was not hope exactly. It was more like faith. She did not know why this quiet, ordinary soldier made her believe, but she did. Far away, in the heart of the palace, Empress Velith sat upon her throne. She had lived for 300 years. She had watched empires rise and fall. She had judged thousands of species and found them all lacking. Now, a new species had come before her, a species called human. She had already read the reports. Humans were weak, short-lived, fragile. They had only discovered space travel recently. By every measure, they should be easy to conquer. But something in the reports troubled her. Humans had a strange history. They fought endless wars among themselves, yet they also created beautiful art and music. They destroyed their own planet, yet they also sacrificed themselves to save strangers. They were a contradiction. "Bring the human to me," Velith commanded. "I wish to see this creature for myself." In the shadows of the throne room, Commander Rin bowed. "Yes, my Empress." Trial was about to begin. And no one, not even the ancient Empress herself, could predict what would happen next. The arena of judgment was older than human civilization. It had been built when the first Orith warriors united their world under a single banner. For 10,000 years, countless species had been tested within its walls. Most had failed. Their worlds now belonged to the Dominion. Te-Ho stood at the entrance of the arena and looked up. The structure was massive, large enough to hold 1 million spectators. The seats rose toward the sky in endless rows, filled with aliens of every shape and size. They had come from across the galaxy to watch the judgment of a new species. Commander Rin walked beside him. "You will face 3 trials," she explained. Her voice echoed through the stone corridors. "Endurance, combat, wisdom, fail any one of them, and your world belongs to us. And if I succeed," Teho asked. Rin glanced at him with something like amusement. "No one succeeds. The trials are designed to reveal the truth of your species. Every species has a breaking point. We will find yours." They entered the main floor of the arena. The ground was made of smooth black stone that reflected the light from above. In the center stood a raised platform where Empress Velith sat upon a floating throne. Her 4 eyes watched Teho as he approached. Around her stood dozens of advisors and nobles, all wearing robes made of light itself. "Human," the Empress spoke. Her voice filled the entire arena without effort. "You stand before the judgment of the Oraeth Dominion. Do you understand what this means?" Teho bowed deeply. "I understand, Your Majesty. Many have stood where you stand now," Velith continued. "Warriors 10 times your size. Creatures with armor for skin and fire in their veins. All of them fell. What makes you think you will be different?" Teho raised his head and met her gaze. "I do not think I will be different. I only know that I must try." A murmur passed through the crowd. The aliens had expected boasting. They had expected threats. They had not expected honesty. Velith studied him for a long moment. "Interesting," she said softly. "Begin the first trial." The floor beneath Teho's feet began to move. The black stones separated, and a new platform rose from below. It was a small chamber made of transparent walls. Inside, Teho could see nothing but empty space. "The trial of endurance," Rin announced. "You will be subjected to extreme conditions. Temperature, pressure, toxic atmosphere, sensory deprivation. You must survive for 1 hour." The Ho looked at the chamber. "And if I cannot, then you die," Rin said simply. "And your species is proven unworthy." Teho nodded and stepped into the chamber. The transparent walls sealed shut behind him. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the trial began. The temperature dropped first. It fell so quickly that frost formed on the walls within seconds. Teho felt the cold bite into his skin like knives. His breath turned to mist. His fingers began to lose feeling. He closed his eyes and focused on his breathing. In through the nose. Hold out through the mouth. His grandfather had taught him this technique during winter training in the mountains. The human body could survive extreme cold if the mind remained calm. After 10 minutes, the temperature shifted again. This time, it rose. The chamber became an oven. Sweat poured from Teho's body. The air burned his lungs with every breath. He felt like he was being cooked alive, but still, he breathed. In through the nose, hold out through the mouth in the audience. Yuna watched through a viewing screen with the other humans. Her hands were shaking. She had studied the Oraeth trials. The temperature extremes alone were enough to kill most species within minutes. Yet Teho was still standing. How is he doing that? One of the diplomats whispered, while Yuna remembered something she had read in Teho's file. He had spent 3 years training soldiers to survive in the harshest conditions on Earth. He had once walked 40 kilometers through a blizzard to save a lost trainee. He had been found with severe frostbite on both hands. But he had never let go of the young soldier on his back. The trial continued. After the heat came the pressure. The chamber compressed around Teho, squeezing his body from all directions. He felt like he was deep underwater, with the weight of an ocean pressing down on him. His ears rang. His vision blurred, but he did not fall. Then came the toxic air. Green gas filled the chamber, burning Teho's eyes and throat. He covered his face with his hands and took shallow breaths. The poison made his head spin. He felt his consciousness beginning to slip away. In that moment, he thought of his mother. She had died when he was young, but he still remembered her face. She used to tell him that pain was just the body's way of telling stories. "Listen to the story," she would say, "but do not let it become who you are." Teho listened to the pain. He acknowledged it, and then he let it go. Finally, the chamber went dark. The sensory deprivation was the worst trial of all. Teho could see nothing, hear nothing, feel nothing except the ground beneath his feet. Time seemed to stop. Minutes felt like hours. Hours felt like years. Most species broke during this phase. Their minds could not handle the emptiness. They screamed. They clawed at the walls. They begged for mercy. Teho sat down on the floor and meditated. He thought of the Korean mountains where he had grown up. He thought of the streams that flowed through the valleys. He thought of the birds that sang at dawn and the stars that appeared at dusk. He filled the emptiness with memories of home. An hour passed. The walls of the chamber became transparent again. Light flooded in. Taeho opened his eyes and stood up slowly. His body ached in ways he had never experienced before, but he was alive. He had survived. The arena was silent. Commander Rin stared at the human with an expression she could not name. She had watched thousands of creatures face the trial of endurance. None of them had remained so calm. None of them had sat down and closed their eyes as if they were taking a nap. On her throne, Empress Velith leaned forward. For the first time in decades, she felt something stir in her ancient heart. It was not admiration exactly. It was more like curiosity. This small, fragile creature had just accomplished something that stronger beings could not. "How did you do that?" she asked. Her voice was quiet, but everyone heard her. Taeho looked up at the Empress. His face was pale. His body trembled with exhaustion. But his eyes were clear and steady. "I grew up in the mountains of my country," he said. "When I was young, my grandfather taught me that the body can endure anything if the mind is willing. He said that pain is temporary, but giving up lasts forever." The Empress said nothing. But something in her expression changed. "The first trial is complete," Rin announced. Her voice was not as cold as before. "The human has passed." The crowd erupted into noise. Some aliens cheered. Others booed. Many simply stared in disbelief. Yuna pressed her hands against the viewing screen and whispered a prayer of thanks. Taeho walked out of the chamber on his own 2 feet. He was tired. He was hurting. But he was not broken. The first trial was over. 2 more remained. They gave Taeho 1 night to rest before the second trial. He was taken to a small room deep within the palace. The room was simple by Orith standards, but it was larger than his entire apartment back in Seoul. A window looked out over the golden city below. Tae-Ho sat by the window and watched the alien ships fly past. His body still ached from the endurance trial. His muscles felt like they had been torn apart and put back together wrong. But he had survived. That was what mattered. A knock came at his door. When he opened it, he found Yuna standing there with a small bag in her hands. "I brought food," she said. "Real food. From Earth?" Taeho smiled and stepped aside to let her in. They sat together by the window and shared a simple meal of rice and vegetables. It was strange to eat Korean food so far from home, but it was also comforting. "Everyone is talking about you," Yuna said. "The aliens cannot understand how you survived. They say humans are supposed to be weak." "We are weak," Taeho said. "Compared to them at least. But weakness is not the same as defeat." Yuna studied his face. "You really believe that, do you not?" Taeho nodded. "I have seen many strong people break under pressure. I have also seen weak people accomplish impossible things. The difference is not in the body. It is in the heart." They talked for hours after that. Yuna told him about her work studying alien languages. She explained how each species had unique ways of expressing ideas that humans could barely understand. Taeho listened carefully. He asked good questions. For a soldier, he was surprisingly thoughtful. As the night grew late, Yuna finally asked the question that had been on her mind all day. "Tomorrow is the combat trial. You will fight Commander Rin. She has killed hundreds of warriors. Some of them were 10 times your size." She paused. "How do you plan to defeat her?" Taeho looked out the window for a long moment. "I do not plan to defeat her," he said. Yuna's eyes widened. "What do you mean?" "I mean that I cannot win a fight against her. She is stronger, faster, and more experienced than I could ever be. If I try to fight her on her terms, I will lose." He turned to face Yuna. "So I will not fight her on her terms." The next morning, the arena of judgment was filled once again. Word had spread about the human who survived the endurance trial. Aliens from distant star systems had traveled through the night just to watch the second trial. No one wanted to miss what would happen next. Tae-Ho walked onto the arena floor alone. He wore simple training clothes, the same kind he wore when teaching survival classes back on Earth. He carried no weapon. His body was still tired from the day before, but his steps were steady. On the opposite side of the arena, Commander Rin appeared. She was dressed in full battle armor, the living metal covering every inch of her body. In her hands, she carried a massive blade that crackled with electricity. Her 4 eyes focused on Taeho with deadly intensity. "Human," she said, "I will give you one chance to surrender. Kneel before the Empress and beg for mercy. Your death will be quick." Taeho bowed respectfully. "Thank you for your kindness, Commander, but I cannot surrender. My people are counting on me." Rin's expression hardened. "Then you will die standing," the trial began. Rin moved like lightning. One moment she was across the arena. The next, she was right in front of Taeho, her blade swinging toward his head. Any normal being would have died in that instant, but Taeho was not trying to block her attack. He was already moving. He ducked low, letting the blade pass over his head by inches, and rolled to the side. The crowd gasped. Rin turned and attacked again. Her blade cut through the air so fast that it made a sound like thunder. Again and again, she struck at the small human. Each blow could have crushed stone. Each swing could have split a ship in half. Taeho dodged them all. He did not try to fight back. He did not try to hurt her. He simply moved. He read her patterns. He watched her feet, her shoulders, her eyes. Every movement she made told him where the next attack would come from. The fight continued for what felt like hours. In reality, it was only 10 minutes. But to Rin, it felt like an eternity. She had never faced an opponent like this. Every other warrior she fought had tried to match her strength. They had all failed. But this human was not fighting at all. He was dancing. Anger began to build inside Rin. She was the greatest warrior in the Dominion. She had never been embarrassed like this. With a roar of fury, she launched her most powerful attack yet. She put everything she had into a single strike that would have destroyed a building. Taeho was waiting for it. At the last possible moment, he stepped inside her guard. He placed his hands on her arm, using her own momentum against her. With a simple twist of his body, he redirected her force. Rin flew through the air and crashed to the ground. The arena went completely silent. Commander Rin. The undefeated champion of the Orth Dominion was lying on her back. A human had put her there. For a long moment, no one moved. Rin stared up at the ceiling, her 4 eyes wide with shock. She could not understand what had just happened. She had been defeated not by strength, but by patience. Not by power, but by wisdom. Taeho walked over to her and extended his hand. Rin looked at his hand. Then she looked at his face. She expected to see pride there, arrogance, triumph. That was what warriors felt when they won. But Taeho's eyes held none of those things. He simply looked at her with respect. "You are the greatest warrior I have ever faced," he said quietly, so only she could hear. "I could not have lasted another minute." Rin did not know how to respond. No defeated enemy had ever spoken to her with kindness. No victor had ever admitted their own weakness. This was not how combat worked, and yet she found her hand reaching up to take his. Taeho helped her to her feet. The crowd exploded into chaos. Some aliens were cheering. Others were shouting in anger. Many simply sat in stunned silence. On her throne, Empress Velith watched without expression. But inside, she felt something she had not felt in centuries. It was not fear exactly. It was something deeper, something older. This human was not like other creatures. He did not fight to dominate. He did not seek glory or revenge. He fought only because he had to. And when the fight was over, he showed kindness to his enemy. What kind of species produced beings like this? "The second trial is complete," an announcer declared. "The human has passed." Rin stood beside Taeho, still holding his hand. She released it slowly, as if waking from a dream. "What you did," she said. "It was not combat. I do not know what to call it," Taeho smiled. "In my country, we call it yielding. The soft overcomes the hard." Water-shaped stone. Rin stared at him for a long time. Then, for the first time in her life, she bowed to an opponent. "You have my respect, human. Whatever happens tomorrow, I will not forget this day." Taeho bowed in return. The second trial was over. One more remained, and it would be the most difficult of all. The night before the final trial, Empress Velith could not sleep. This was unusual. She had ruled for 300 years. She had made decisions that affected billions of lives without losing a moment of rest. Nothing disturbed her peace, but tonight was different. She stood alone on the balcony of her private chambers, looking out at the city she had built. The golden towers stretched toward the stars. Ships moved through the darkness like fireflies. Everything she could see belonged to her. Everything she could imagine had been conquered in her name. And yet, she felt empty. A knock came at her door. It was Commander Rin. "My Empress," Rin said, bowing low. "You summoned me." Velith did not turn around. "Tell me about the human. What do you think of him?" Rin was silent for a moment. She had been thinking about Taeho since the combat trial. She had fought countless warriors. She had killed creatures that could crush mountains. But she had never met anyone who confused her like this small human. "He is unlike anything I have encountered," she admitted. "He is weak by our standards, fragile, short-lived, and yet there is something about him that I cannot explain. When he looked at me after the fight, I felt something I have never felt before." "What was it?" Velith asked. Rin hesitated. "I think it was shame. Not because I lost, but because I realized that winning was never his goal. He was not trying to defeat me. He was trying to understand me. No enemy has ever done that." Velith finally turned to face her commander. "Tomorrow is the final trial. The trial of wisdom. It is traditionally my duty to judge the tribute's answer. What question will you ask him?" The Empress walked to a window and looked at her own reflection. Her face had not changed in centuries. She was still young by Orith's standards. She would live for thousands of years more. But lately, she had begun to wonder if living and truly being alive were the same thing. "I will ask him the question I have asked every species we have judged," she said. "The question that none of them have ever answered correctly." The next day, the arena of judgment was filled beyond capacity. Aliens hung from the rafters and crowded the aisles. News broadcasts carried the event to every corner of the galaxy. Everyone wanted to see how the human trials would end. Tadash Ho walked onto the arena floor for the final time. His body had healed somewhat from the previous trials, but exhaustion still weighed on his shoulders. He had slept poorly the night before. Dreams of home had haunted him. Dreams of his mother. Dreams of the mountains where he grew up. Yuna watched from her seat among the diplomats. She had barely eaten since the trials began. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Taeho facing impossible challenges alone. She wished she could be there with him. She wished she could help somehow, but this trial was different. This was not a test of the body. It was a test of the mind. And no one could help Taeho answer for humanity. Empress Velith descended from her throne. She did not float. She did not use any display of power. She simply walked down the stairs like any ordinary being. The crowd grew silent as she approached the human standing in the center of the arena. They faced each other. The ancient empress and the ordinary soldier. A creature who had lived for 3 centuries and a creature who might not live to see 50. By every measure, they should have had nothing in common. But Taeho met her gaze without fear, and Velith found herself searching his eyes for something she could not name. "The final trial is wisdom," she announced. Her voice carried to every corner of the arena. "I will ask you one question, human. Your answer will determine the fate of your species." Ho nodded. "I am ready." Velith studied him for a long moment. Then she asked the question she had asked 1,000 times before. "Why should your species be allowed to exist when you are so weak?" The arena held its breath. This was the question that had condemned countless species. Those who answered with pride were seen as arrogant. Those who answered with humility were seen as pathetic. Those who boasted of their technology or their resources were seen as threats to be eliminated. No species had ever given an answer that satisfied the Empress. Taeho was silent. Seconds passed. Then minutes. The crowd began to murmur. Was the human going to answer it all? Finally, Taeho spoke. "We are weak." The crowd stirred. This was not the answer they expected. Taeho continued. Humans have always known we are weak. Our claws are dull. Our skin is soft. We cannot fly. We cannot breathe underwater. We cannot survive in the cold or the heat without protection. By the standards of the universe, we should have died out long ago. He paused. But we did not die. We survived. And the reason we survived is because of our weakness, not in spite of it. Veleth's eyes narrowed. Explain. Because we knew we were weak. We learned to work together. We built communities. We shared knowledge. We protected each other. When one of us fell, another would carry them. When one of us was afraid, another would give them courage. Teo's voice was steady. Our weakness taught us that we needed each other. And from that need, we learned something that strength alone could never teach us. We learned to love. The arena was completely silent now. Love is strange, Tejo continued. It makes no logical sense. It causes pain. It creates fear. It makes us vulnerable in ways that nothing else can. And yet, it is the source of everything good that humans have ever done. He looked directly at the Empress. You asked why we should be allowed to exist? I cannot give you a reason based on strength or power or usefulness. But I can tell you this. Humans do not just survive for ourselves. We survive for each other. We carry the memories of those who came before us. We fight for the dreams of those who will come after us. Tejo took a step closer to the throne. You have conquered 1,000 worlds, Your Majesty. You have ruled for 300 years. You have power beyond anything I can imagine. But I have a question for you. Veleth's 4 eyes widened slightly. No tribute had ever dared to question her. In all your centuries of life, Tejo said quietly, have you ever been willing to die for someone you love? The silence that followed was absolute. Not a single being in the arena moved or spoke. They all watched the Empress, waiting for her response. But Veleth did not respond. She simply stood there, staring at the small human before her. Something was happening behind her ancient eyes. Something that she did not understand. She thought of her own life. 300 years of conquest. 300 years of power. She had taken everything she wanted. She had crushed everyone who opposed her. She had built an empire that would last for millennia, but she had never loved. Not truly. Not in the way this human described. She had never held someone close, knowing that she would give her life for them. She had never felt the weight of another heart beating against her own. She had won everything, and she had nothing. The realization hit her like a blade to the heart. For the first time in centuries, Empress Veleth did not know what to say. Te-Ho waited patiently. He did not gloat. He did not press his advantage. He simply stood there, giving her time to process what she was feeling. And in that moment of silence, everything changed. Empress Veleth stood frozen in the center of the arena. The weight of 10,000 years of tradition pressed down upon her shoulders. The expectations of 1 billion watching eyes burned into her back. She was the ruler of the greatest empire the galaxy had ever known. She was supposed to judge this creature. She was supposed to declare his species unworthy, but she could not speak. Tejo's question echoed in her mind like thunder. Have you ever been willing to die for someone you love? Such a simple question. Such a small collection of words. And yet it had broken something inside her that she did not know existed. The arena began to murmur. The silence had stretched too long. Aliens shifted in their seats. Advisors exchanged worried glances. Commander Rin took a step forward, ready to intervene if necessary. Then Empress Veleth did something that no one expected. She knelt. The ruler of 1,000 star systems, the conqueror of countless worlds, the most powerful being in the known galaxy, lowered herself to her knees before a small human soldier. The arena erupted into chaos. Aliens screamed in shock. Some cried out in anger. Others sat in stunned silence, unable to process what they were witnessing. Advisors rushed forward but stopped when Veleth raised her hand. Silence, she commanded. The chaos stopped immediately. Even in this moment of vulnerability, her power was absolute. Veleth looked up at Tejo from her kneeling position. Her 4 eyes glistened with something that might have been tears, though the Orth were not supposed to cry. "I have lived for 300 years," she said. Her voice was quiet, but every being in the arena heard her clearly. "I have ruled with absolute power. I have crushed rebellions and burned worlds. I have done whatever was necessary to make my empire strong." She paused. "But you are right, human. I have never loved. I have never allowed myself that weakness. I convinced myself that love was for lesser species, that it was a flaw to be eliminated, that true strength meant needing no one." She lowered her head. "I was wrong." The crowd was utterly silent now. Many aliens had stopped breathing entirely. "Your species frightens me," Velith continued. "Not because you are strong. You are not. Not because you are advanced. You are not. You frighten me because you have found something that my people lost long ago. You have found a reason to live beyond mere survival." She rose slowly to her feet. When she stood again, she seemed different somehow, smaller, more vulnerable, but also more real than she had ever been before. "I have judged thousands of species in this arena," she said. "I have asked them all the same question. Every single one of them answered with pride or fear or desperation. They told me about their weapons, their technology, their resources. They tried to convince me that they deserved to exist because they were useful, because they were strong, because they were too dangerous to destroy." She looked at Tejo with something like wonder. "You are the first creature to answer with truth. You are weak. You know it. And instead of hiding that weakness, you embraced it. You turned it into something beautiful." Velith raised her voice so the entire arena could hear. "From this day forward, Earth is not a subject of the Orth Dominion. Earth is an ally, an equal, a friend." The announcement sent shockwaves through the crowd. Aliens gasped and shouted. Some cheered wildly. Others protested in anger. But none of them could change what had just happened. Commander Rin stepped forward and bowed deeply. "My Empress, are you certain?" "The Council will object. The traditions of 10,000 years—" "The traditions were wrong," Velith interrupted. "We built an empire on strength alone. We conquered everything we touched. And look at what it gave us. Power without purpose. Victory without joy. Life without love." She shook her head slowly. "We have forgotten what it means to truly live." She turned back to Tejo. "You asked me if I had ever been willing to die for someone I love? The answer is no. But perhaps it is not too late to learn." Tejo bowed respectfully. "It is never too late, Your Majesty. That is another thing humans believe. No matter how far we fall, we can always rise again. No matter how much we have lost, we can always find our way home." Velith smiled. It was a strange expression on her ancient face, unfamiliar and uncertain. But it was genuine. "You are a remarkable creature, Sergeant Park Tejo. Your species is fortunate to have you." Tejo shook his head. "I am not remarkable. I am just one person. What makes humanity special is not any single individual. It is all of us together. The doctors who heal, the teachers who inspire, the parents who sacrifice, the children who dream. We are strong because we are many. We are great because we lift each other up." He looked out at the crowd of aliens watching him. "And that is not something unique to humans. Every species has the capacity for love. Every species has the ability to grow beyond their nature. Perhaps that is the true purpose of the universe. Not to survive, not to conquer, but to connect, to care for each other, to become more than we were." From her seat among the diplomats, Yuna wept openly. She had hoped that Tejo would survive. She had prayed that humanity would be saved. But she had never imagined this. She had never dreamed that one ordinary soldier could change the heart of an empire. The ceremony ended shortly after. Tejo was escorted back to the human delegation, where he was surrounded by grateful diplomats and crying scientists. Everyone wanted to touch him, to thank him, to tell him what his victory meant. But Tejo just wanted to sit down. He was exhausted. 3 trials had pushed him beyond anything he had ever experienced. He needed rest. He needed quiet. He needed time to process everything that had happened. Yuna found him later that evening. sitting alone in his room by the window. The city glowed below them, but Tejo was not looking at it. He was looking at his own hands. "You did it," Yuna said softly. "You saved us all." Tejo shook his head. "I did not save anyone. I just told the truth." "That is exactly what saved us." Yuna sat beside him. "Do you understand what you accomplished today? You changed the mind of an empress who had not changed in 300 years. You showed the entire galaxy that there is another way to be." Tejo was quiet for a long moment. Then he smiled slightly. "When I was young, my mother told me that every person carries a light inside them. She said that the purpose of life is not to make your own light brighter. It is to help others find their light when they have lost it." He looked at Yuna. The Empress had lost her light. She had buried it so deep that she forgot it existed. All I did was remind her that it was still there. Yuna took his hand. "That is not a small thing," No Tejo agreed. "Perhaps it is the biggest thing of all." The ship left the Orith homeworld the next morning. As it rose through the atmosphere and pointed toward Earth, Tejo stood at a window and watched the alien planet grow smaller and smaller. He thought about everything he had seen. The massive arena, the powerful Empress, the warriors and nobles and creatures from across the galaxy. They had all expected him to fail. They had all believed that humanity was too weak to matter. But they were wrong. Humanity's strength was not in its weapons or its technology. It was not in the size of its soldiers or the power of its ships. Humanity's strength was in its heart, in its ability to love and hope and dream, in its willingness to sacrifice for others, in its refusal to give up, no matter how dark the night became. Tejo smiled as Earth appeared in the distance, a small blue dot against the endless black. He was going home, and the galaxy would never be the same.